webinar, just so we could send it to other recruiters as well who weren't able to make it today. But yeah, we'll get kickstarted here. And then I think the first slide here is Accident Guys says Phillips Law. Ashwin, if you want to take that.
Yeah, for sure. So as Samir pointed out, or just a short time ago, so Simran would be usually running through these roles as they're hers, but Samir and I will cover as she's unfortunately feeling a little under weather, and we wish her the best and hope she gets back on her feet soon. I'll start with Accident Guys and Phillips Law. So both are PI firms. Accident Guys, the role they're expanding nationally, which is pretty great to see. We've placed two people with them already. One in Colorado, where they're expanding into Colorado, and the second in Seattle, where they're growing their presence in Washington State. This role and actually the Phillips Law role are both intake attorney roles. Accident Guys in LA, Phillips Law in Phoenix. An intake attorney, as some of you may already know, their whole job is to ensure that they are vetting the roles or vetting the cases that are crossing their desk. The way Accident Guys and Phillips Law both work, they work on a contingency basis, so they need to ensure that the cases that they take are the ones that have the highest likelihood of them getting paid out on. And so these roles are actually quite critical for their business success overall. It's not simply finishing the work, but it's actually pretty strategic in nature and like ensuring that the right cases hit their respective desks. On the Accident Guys side, as noted here, it's in LA, 5 days in office, though I do think there's a little bit of flexibility. We have a very strong relationship, both with Dana, the hiring manager, as well as Omid, who's the partner there, one of the founding partners there. And so I think if it's like 5 days in office, but if folks have to take a day off or to go to the doctor or whatnot, I think they've been flexible on that front. 130 to 180, and then looking for 1 to 9 years and a 14% fee. The key thing here, two key things to note are, and this kind of applies to all roles, but I've definitely seen it with the Accent Guys. If you find that the role comp is a little low based on your research, just like talking to candidates, like candidates saying, no, I'm not interested because the comp is too low, let us know. For both the Seattle role and the Colorado role, we were actually able to increase the top of the band and found amazing candidates for the Accident Guys. So they're definitely open to it. We just need to have that conversation and for y'all to share that data with us so we can kind of facilitate. I will note on the Accident Guy side, as stated here, they do need to be barred in the state of California, and they must be able to speak Spanish, as I think a significant portion of the work that kind of will hit this intake attorney's desk will be from clients who are Spanish language speakers. Um, and so, again, California bar, Spanish required, 5 days in office. But again, like if you need to go to the hospital or go to the doctor or something, I think they have been flexible on that. Bonus opportunity, yes, there is a bonus opportunity. I actually asked Dana this morning as well, and we'll post an announcement in the role itself once I hear back. And I think that the other thing to keep in mind here is like they've been very good about there's a degree of flexibility on comp. They've negotiated with both the lawyers in Seattle and Colorado, and I think there'll be something similar here for a great candidate. Phillips Law Phoenix, 1 to 7 years, as noted here. We're actually talking to the hiring manager in like an hour and a half at 10:30. So if there are any additional notes that come out of that conversation, we'll be sure to share through announcements as well. But they've also been a great partner for us, and this is like the most urgent role for their team. Let me pause here, see if there are any additional questions. If not, and obviously feel free to Slack us, email us. More than happy to and like take this off of the rec room to answer questions. If not, we can move on to the next room or the next role. Excuse me.
Yeah, and for the next role, this is a role I've been pushing pretty consistently. So recruiters working with me are probably familiar, but it's Manning and Cass. They're hiring across 7 or 8 roles on the platform right now. Most of them are going to be in California on a hybrid basis. They don't sponsor visa, and their fee, I believe, is sitting at 14%. Generally speaking, the firm seems to be in growth mode, and I think they have offices that they're starting in New York and Texas as well. So it looks like we have Dallas and New York, and those are going to be their first hires outside of California. So across the entire platform, they've had about 3 to 4 submissions, and we know that they have a really quick hiring process, fully over Zoom, and the hiring managers have been extremely responsive. and they've been asking us to kind of get candidates going for them as soon as we can. For the practice areas, I could really quickly maybe get into that, and if it perks anybody's ears up, feel free to apply. Um, but let me take a look. I know there was a civil litigation associate that they were looking for, civil defense litigation associate, workers' compensation, senior litigation, another one on the defense side. And then they have a couple of other roles, complex litigation, governmental entity, liability associate, law and motion associate, and then premises liability. I think it's a mid-level associate as well. So definitely different types of associate positions that they're looking for. And then I don't think there was anything on the senior side except the litigation defense associate that they were looking for. But as I said, in this case, you guys always ask, who are the most responsive hiring managers? If we get a submission in, how fast will they respond? This is definitely one of those roles that I would highlight in that case. And then I'm also a little bit biased because I have a relationship with this client, so I know they're doing well and they continue to expand. So happy to help them in that process as well through Paraform. Gonna move on to Hogue Fenton as well. Hogue Fen is a place where we've made hires previously, and we just chatted with the hiring manager on Tuesday, and all these roles are pressing. On top of that, we'll have a couple new ones going up on the platform today. And it looks like we have trust and estates, mid-level, and of counsel. And then they're also looking for a litigation assistant. For the roles that are already on the platform, it's the four ones listed under that. So that'll be the senior employment law attorney, senior trust and estate litigation attorney, and then family law associate and litigation associate. Um, we have a great relationship with this firm, move extremely quickly. They're just a phone call away, and they have a pretty good reputation regionally within kind of the Bay Area and California more generally. I think they have 3 or 4 offices: San Jose, Pleasanton, and San Mateo. So people in the kind of Bay Area, good opportunity for them. Um, I don't think this is a remote role or anything like that. Definitely more on a hybrid basis. Will we be coming into the office 2 to 3 days a week? But from what we know, they have been pretty flexible when it comes to, you know, book a business on, for example, senior employment law attorney. If it's a great person, they have the experience necessary to come fill the role. They're definitely open to looking at the profiles. Just have to take a look at the partners. Just an example happened a couple days ago where didn't have a book, willing to develop it, and a great candidate in general. When they see a profile like that, they usually are able to kind of speak with us if they trust us, go on and continue with the role. But any questions so far? I know I kind of went through 2 of these pretty quickly. And then I'll also send the links for the roles in a bit. Sorry, what
I
were you
will
gonna say?
note, I will note that like we're on texting basis with the Hogue Fenton team. So if you have any like burning questions, we can get them answered incredibly quickly. Actually, I'm on text basis with accident guys as well. So just let us know.
Yeah, and then I'll start sending over the links as well, so you guys can just click into these roles and dive into them right away. And I was also going to recommend, I think we were just speaking about it, but when you're applying for these roles on a trial basis, from days 8 to 10, you'll be able to extend it. We know that the 10-day kind of trial timeline has been scaring people. We fully understand that's not how it really works in the legal recruiting space. So usually it's around 15 days, and then we're looking for one qualified candidate submission, and we always manually approve any extensions that you guys are asking for over on the legal side. So just wanted to quickly highlight that before we move on to the next role. And on this side, this is RCS Legal. And then Ashwin, did you want to take it, or I could take
Yeah,
this one as well?
I can take this. Just a quick note on what Samir said around trials. We have dedicated product resourcing. So we're in the process of updating the trial parameters. So more to come on this. But effectively echoing what Samir said, the trial parameters as they exist today cater more to the tech side of the house than the legal side of the house. And so we are building legal specific parameters, and there should be more to come on this in the next like week or so. RCS Legal. So RCS Legal is another like AI native law firm, neo law firm, ALSP. They Let's just say there are a lot of the candidates that we've seen thus far for say general legal, Firecrawl, skilled. A lot of those same candidates I think could be put forth for RCS, and it is actually part of our motion now to continue to bring on as many of these roles and these firms as possible, so y'all can get multiple shots on goal with the same candidates. A big kind of candidate first approach that we're trying to take here now. Um, The compensation here is 150 to 200, about zero point 0.1 to 0.3% in equity, 6 days in office, and they're looking for somebody that's kind of coming in from a mid to like early senior level position with some in-house counsel experience. This is candidly one area where I think, well, I will be planning to speak with the RCS team to provide them feedback that the compensation may not necessarily land with the talent that they're looking for. And I think this is also like where I would look to hear feedback from y'all about what candidates are saying to you too. The more data points that we have, the better it would be for us then be able to convince RCS that they need to increase where they're at. Um, and I think it's my suspicion here is like they will be very like receptive to the feedback because this is a pretty significant need for them. They've been texting Alex on our team a lot. I don't know if folks have met Alex. Alex Hatworth is one of the founding members of the legal team, former MLA, but like very very active in kind of bringing on new roles like this. And so we know this is a high demand position for them. Uh, but we also recognize that the compensation here likely needs to shift, and the more data you can share with us, the smoother the conversation will be on our end to get them to shift as well. Um, I will note this RCS is also a little unique in that they have both full-time and contractor roles, and I know folks have asked us, so how does contractor, like how do we get paid out for contractor roles? The way it works is if the candidate gets hired on a contract basis, um, we tally up their monthly invoicing. So we ask RCS to tell us, hey, how much should they bill you on a monthly basis? We should be able to calculate that on our end, and then just have RCS confirm. And then the recruiter split that currently exists, which I don't have off the top of my head, unfortunately, whatever that split is, gets applied to each of those monthly invoices. So just to keep the math easy, let's say the monthly invoice is for $100 and the split is 70% to y'all, 30% to Paraform. You would make the $70, and then Paraform keep the remaining 30. Um, if they convert then from contractor to full time, the way that would work is we would take what like the we'll call it the regular payout would be. So if their starting salary was $100,000, let's just keep the math easy. The gross fee that they pay Paraform is 20%, so $20,000. And then it's a 70-30 split. We would take that 14,000, that would be their like the earnings off of their first year, and then just subtract whatever they've already paid us for the monthly kind of monthly contracting work. And so whatever that balance is would then be split based on whatever the split is for this role. I think it's 70-30, 70% to the recruiter, 30% to Paraform. But again, I haven't. This is one of Simran's roles, so I actually don't know the specifics on the percentage itself. But that's how the contractor. That's how you would get paid on the contract basis. That's also how you would get paid if they were to convert from being contractors to being full time. If folks have like further questions on this, don't hesitate to email or Slack. More than happy to kind of put this in writing and share as well. This is a relatively new motion for us too. For the most part, we focus almost entirely on just full-time roles. But we do recognize, especially for some of these AI law firms, legal tech companies that don't yet have the budget necessarily to hire somebody that's coming in, say, from Big Law, or they don't necessarily have enough work to justify hiring somebody at a higher salary. A contract path seems the most viable for them, and we want to be as flexible as possible, but at the same time, make sure the economics work for all parties. Um, the other thing I'll note here is, so as you can see my hat, I went to Stanford for law school. Like this is an area where like I have a lot of friends that are in this space as well, which means I also have a good degree of familiarity with what it is that like RCS or general legal, et cetera, are looking for. Don't hesitate to like if you're unsure to send us like a LinkedIn or a quick resume kind of screen. More than happy to do that as well before we put any candidates forward to save time on your part. We can do this. We can like do a quick review on our end and let you know if it makes sense or not. Cool. Thank you.
Of course. And yeah, just to slightly add on to that, thank you for the note, Ruby. We saw that. Any market feedback generally as well should naturally fit into the trial process. So if you end up, not wanting to work a role for whatever reason, and there's specific market feedback you've gotten, either from candidates or that you've noticed, feel free to throw that information to us. When you're dropping the role, you could usually put in that information, and then always, send us a message on Slack, send us an email, and those are good spaces to be able to talk to me and the rest of the team. Um, yeah, I'll continue here for the next role, which I believe is now Jackson.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all again. Thank you for being here. Some great roles we've seen before, a handful more to show you all to get really excited about. First, we have Sweetelson. So I know we briefly touched on this on the last call. Who are they? They're a about 40-year-old HOA firm in California. They have three roles on platform, two that I'm highlighting today. Uh, Before I even get into the details here, the HM RM is extremely active, very exciting, very passionate, and they are really looking for submissions. This is a growth hire. The partners are billing over 200 hours a month because there's too much work, which is a good thing. So they really need this. Uh, as you see, the salary here is 160 to 200 plus the discretionary above that 1,800 hour target. So obviously, it's not the big law hours. Um, I would like to also mention this is a work from home role. They do have to be, the candidate has to be from California, preferred SoCal, but it is work from home, so that does increase the candidate pool. In terms of the ideal candidate, as you can see on this profile, really it's like 7 to 15 years of civil litigation, including actual trial time. And ideally, it could be out of a California HOA boutique, real estate litigation, construction, defect, creditor side bankruptcy, those kind of backgrounds all translate well. Um, I should flag that we do need a writing sample, and then self-motivation is really hard screen. They are a smaller group, so you really have to be intrinsically motivated here. And that's this first role. I will post in the chat so you can see the link.
We have a
And as
question,
always,
Barry, saying submitted them a week ago, haven't heard back. I think we could take that offline, Cherry. We can kind of ping you on Slack to see where things stand there. Jackson, this is your role, correct?
yeah, so right now, yes, Sherry, he's already brought it up to the partner and they're reviewing it. So they're very excited. Nothing's broken. They're taking a look at it. Thank you for the question there. We can move over to the second role they have. So same firm here. This time, this is the transactional attorney for corp governance and HOA. Same firm, looking for people. Very exciting HM. Same setup, but this one's really that 5 to 7 years transactional. But there's really HOA knowledge is not required. It's a plus, but if this person really understands transactions, understands corporate governance, real estate backgrounds, they don't have to specifically be HOA. They can learn that on the job because they understand HOA is a very niche area. So once again, another very exciting role. I will put this link in the chat for you all. And they're actively reviewing resumes as we speak. All right. Another really exciting firm here is Berman Tobacco. Another California-based role with some flex. They do have some need in Boston, but really San Francisco is their main goal here. So who is Berman Tobacco? What are we doing here? They have three roles on platform. Two I want to talk about. The first one is the securities litigation associate, um, which in this case they are about 160 to 220 plus plus discretionary bonus. A great thing here is that there's no billable hours requirement. They have generous PTO policy and it's hybrid. So it's a very good firm in terms of its reputation. They do a great job. Really, what they're looking for in an ideal candidate is a defense side lateral, which is really that's what they're looking for here. They really screen on job hopping. So if you think about frequent, under 2 year changes, they have to have an explainable reason for that. If not, that's a hard screen. The HM is super nice, very responsive, and once again, they're looking to review resumes as we speak. This is another growth hire. I'll put this in the chat as well. Securities litigation. All right. And the next one here is the case investigations attorney. Once again, same firm, same schedule, very generous PTO policy, great work culture. Really, the bar here is 4 to 10 years in securities litigation. They also really screen for the thinking power and creative thinking over not necessarily like the years of experience. Of course, they have a range there to put you in the ballpark, but truly, this person is smart, motivated, understands securities litigation, and is based in San Francisco. This would be a great candidate. They're very excited, good relationship with them, so please do um, send over some of your candidates here. They're looking forward to reviewing. I'll put this also in the chat as well. Here we go. Great. A new firm for the list here is Rosenberg and Estes. We recently had the intake call with them, so this is fresh off the press. Once again, another hybrid role, which is great, but this time based in New York. So if you haven't heard of their Rosenberg and Estes, who are they? What do they do? They are an extremely well-regarded real estate and firm in New York, one of the highest ranked boutiques there. They have great comp, as you can see here already. And in terms of the ideal candidates here, really 4 to 10 years of residential regulatory rent work. It's more of not necessarily too niche, but everyone already knows the R&E name, so the outreach conversion should be a little bit higher than some of the other firms. We also listed a lot of good calibration candidates and also firms to source from there. The candidates really do a detailed write-up here on the candidate because Lena, who is the HM, reads them, not just the resume, but wants to understand the candidate on who they are. I also want to flag that they are flexible. Everything is negotiable for the right candidate, so don't let comp be the reason. They just explicitly said if you have a good candidate, we don't want comp to be the reason that we miss them. So keep that in mind when doing outreach. Once again, though, they're reviewing resumes as we speak, and they're a fantastic New York firm. I'll put this in the chat for the role here. And we will also send out a PDF of this presentation afterwards. You can take a deeper dive into looking, oh, on the left side is here's an ideal candidate, their backgrounds, experiences, why they're good. And we're also happy to answer questions as well. And let's go to the next one. Perfect. Once again, another brand new role. Same firm here. This time it's the real estate litigation associate. Hybrid schedule, 5+ years of complex real estate litigation here, which is representing the landlord side, owners and developers in New York. It's a wider pool of candidates than the previous role. Same thing in terms of they don't want to miss out on the right candidate, so everything is negotiable if the candidate is good. 1,800 hours billable minimum for both roles. So once again, this is not, pushing 2,000 hours plus. So that is an upside here, and that hybrid schedule does entice and make it a lot more palatable. So once again, great role. The HM is very active, brand new, and they are reviewing resumes as we speak and be one of those first movers. I just put that in the chat as well. All right. So Seattle Litigation Group, I had a call with the HM yesterday. Super great guy, amazing firm. Hence the title. This is based in Seattle. It is 5 days in office, but they really pride themselves on the culture that they have there. Culture not only in terms of people, but also in terms of the hours that you bill. 120 to 125 a month, a lot more sustainable than some other firms, especially for that associate attorney role. They really need resumes. They are essentially have too much work to do, which is good. And so you'll be thrust right into the action. And they are desperately looking for resumes. So if you have anyone in that Seattle area, I know the geo is a little bit smaller. They are really looking forward to that. Um, it's really ideal candidate, like 6+ years of civil litigation with real motion practice and discovery, and someone who wants that professional independence rather than years of, drafting memos for senior partners. Overall practice is a mix of employment law, school law, and general civil lit. And the firm steers cases towards your interest over time, so it can appeal to anyone who wants to shape kind of their own practice. They also have generous 401k packages and other things, so really worth a look. I'll place that in the chat too. All right. Now, RPCK, just to kind of go through, there are 3 roles that we're targeting here. They're very active on the platform. Che, who is stepping in as the reviewer, is actively looking through the platform. And then Chintan, who's the partner, is also very excited to help fill these roles. Essentially, this is a very highly ranked impact investing boutique. All three roles have the same compensation, which is 250 to 400, and they're all based off of the portable book, and they have a tiered bonus. Notice the hours requirement is 1,400 versus Big Law is 2,100 plus, so that's a huge draw here, as well as a hybrid style of work. What I really want to anchor on here is they would like to know upfront in terms of the salary expectations, no surprises later on. So if there's a candidate that, says they're targeting 350, and then later on, they change to maybe 375, 400, make sure that's said right away, just to make sure that everyone is aligned in the process. They have three specific roles. They have the partner or of counsel for funds, corporate, and for senior debt. All of them have that about 10 to 15 years of experience needed. One flag here is a lot of their partners are ex-Big Law, but they also really like to draw from boutiques. A lot of their work in terms of like the transaction work isn't necessarily mega sized deals. It can actually be smaller and mid size. So we've seen candidates actually have success who might not necessarily only work in the large deals, but also the medium sized deals as well. So that's a flag there too. But great firm, responsive, and they're looking to move people quickly through the interview process. I'll put the links to those in the chat as well. Here you go. And then here, there are three more that we can go through. These are ones that really do need single subs. So these are not roles that, oh, I'm going to join them. I'm going to source a bunch of different candidates and be that lead recruiter. These are, if you know somebody, great, put them through the process. The reason why I'm flashing these three up, specifically Hutchinson first, is the HM is active. They have basically no one in the pipeline, and they really want to hire ASAP. So I won't go into as much detail as I did with the other roles. Essentially, just the basics here. Excuse me. As Hutchinson is a Raleigh or Chapel Hill based firm. This is really like that ECVC high growth firm. What are they looking for as a corporate associate? The only, I guess, blocker is they really need to be in North Carolina, which I know the geo is smaller. That's why they've been struggling to fill it. So if you know someone who has that kind of M&A, ECVC background and is in Raleigh, they will definitely look at them. And they're reviewing ASAP. I actually talked with the HM 2 days ago. So another great role, single sub. And I'll put that in the chat for you all as well. Now, Previous Law, this is also a newer one on the firm. They're known as the solar panel firm, but they're expanding. Once again, this is just a single sub needed. Who are they? Where are they based? Fully remote role, but have to be Texas barred. Aside from that, really what they're looking for, 10 plus years in consumer bankruptcy, specifically those Chapter 7 filings. They also have a good bonus structure and great bonuses in terms of not just cash, but also culture and in the back end in terms of the work-life balance. So another great single sub firm. I will post that in the chat for all of us here. All right. And then you can move on to the final one, which is HAP. HAP is also a new one. This is probably the most engaged HM that I've seen in the last few weeks on the platform. Chris is not only an amazingly nice guy, but is actively messaging. Every single recruiter is asking questions. He's in there every day. So what is this? This is Family Law Associate. I really think this is a fantastic firm. I might be a little bit biased. They are based in San Diego. It is fully in office 5 days a week. Um, but the billable hours are very, very work-life balance, lifestyle friendly. The bonus kicks in at 110 billable hours per month, which, if you do the math, is quite low. And then they have a tiered bonus structure above that. So it's a really, if you work more, you get rewarded for it. Very, no pun intended, family-driven firm in terms of they have like the collegial environment. They're looking to hire someone who has a great personality as well as good skills. Once again, if you have anyone in that family law background, definitely shoot a single sub through. They're actively reviewing as we speak and have a very quick interview process. So I will put that in the chat as well for us. All right, and that wraps it up on my end. I really appreciate you sticking through those rapid fire rolls at the end there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jackson. Any questions about any of the roles? Then we saw a couple of people have applied to trials, so I appreciate you guys quickly doing that and getting on a couple of them. But yeah, any questions before we go on to a couple of the tools um, and highlighting kind of other parts of the platform?
One thing I'll ask of everybody here is obviously we went through a lot of roles. If there's feedback around how we've presented the roles, if there's other information you want us to share on a call like this, or if you feel like there are just too many roles that are kind of being described at this point, let us know. The purpose of this obviously is to give you the most information that we can in a live setting like this. And so if it's not particularly of help to you, we would want to hear that so that we can kind of improve the rec room for our next few ones. Thank you.
That it's done like this, it makes the most sense. Appreciate that sharing, and thank you for everyone throwing thumbs ups as well. We appreciate uh, the kind of feedback there. But I'll quickly go into a couple of the tools on the platform that we've been utilizing. I'm gonna have to change the way I'm sharing my screen into the window, and then let me know when you guys can see that.
Yep.
Okay, so should be sharing it now. The first thing I wanted to highlight was the sequence tool, which I know a couple of people have been using, but some people haven't been, and a couple of the best practices associated. So if you're not familiar with what a sequence tool is, it will just send emails automatically for you to a group of leads or candidates. We have done a pretty good job of putting this and integrating it within the system. I will say, there are probably other tools that might have better enrichment data wise and things like that. But if you do not have a tool, I would definitely utilize this, and it definitely will add to your kind of messaging and outreach to candidates on top of everything you're already doing on LinkedIn with InMails and Connects. This is definitely a way to kind of multi-thread on top of that, and something that we'd recommend. So this is just an example. You can find this on the left-hand side, and then this is just something I clicked into. So once you're in the sequence, there are a couple of things here. You'll be able to go to sequence on the right-hand side, and you'll be able to build this out. This was literally one prompt on my side where I clicked on this Parabot. Do not click the one on the top right. This one won't be able to help you. But if you click on this one to the left of the cogwheel, and I think this is automatic, but I just added write a complete outreach sequence for this role, 3 emails, a few days apart, each one short and specific, fill in the steps directly so I could review them and edit them. And it gave me this. So this is for the ECVC role at Wilson Sonsini. I'm just using it as an example. But yeah, what it does is it, adds the dynamic variables for you automatically, which you could find on the right-hand side here. And what this does is it basically just sends people email, but I would change it up a little bit. Obviously, this is just a template, something to get started with, and then you would add your own flair to it. Because if everyone's sending the same email, it's not going to be engaging for candidates. It honestly might end up even being a bit of an annoyance on their end and hindering your ability to recruit them. So I would definitely change this up. You guys have the experience. You guys have been doing legal recruiting. This is just a good base to quickly work off of. And on top of that, in some cases, people do variants. So you can do A/B testing on the email if that's something you're open to. But definitely would consider utilizing this. When you're setting it up, you would click the settings page, uh, you know, name the sequence, add the role, link a project if you're utilizing those, and then you need to connect your inbox. In our case, we have connections with both Outlook and Gmail. What we recommend is adding a couple of inboxes so you can do more than just that 25 emails or 100 emails over the course of the week. I would add a Gmail signature just to make it look a little bit more professional, but I would not add any images or links because those affect deliverability, and you might end up in the spam filter of an attorney's inbox. So, and I would also turn off tracks, opens, and clicks. This is generally, even in text, something that people will turn off when they're mass emailing, as it's really inconsistent on the data and feedback it's giving you. And I'd rather it not kind of hinder. If you see like 100% open rate, only one click, that usually doesn't add up. What we've seen is, for the most part, when you do outreach like this, a 1 to 3% reply rate is probably the most common. But this is just generally across sequencing an email, kind of mass outbound email, and not just specifically Paraform sequencing tool. Something that would be interesting that you guys can focus on, though, is the timing at which you're sending emails. I've talked to a couple of recruiters. Some think the strategy is to get them at a bad time, which is like that's 7 or 8 p.m. on a Tuesday, sending over an email, kind of catching their eye when they're a little bit stressed and they're overworked, especially for the people in the kind of big law space. Uh, That's just, I would follow whatever schedule you want to follow on your end. We support everything on that side. And then we recommend in a daily limit of 25 emails per day. You can add multiple inboxes, which can put you to 100 a day if necessary. But we also want to quickly highlight that when you're adding leads, you usually only add under 100. In this case, you could import it straight from the CRM, or you could bulk import using a CSV. Uh, but I would not do more than 100 candidates at once because we've seen that affects deliverability. So don't do a list of 300 or 500. If you're going to do that, I would recommend spreading it out. Either way, you will need more inboxes to connect so you can kind of hit those deliverability goals either way. Any questions so far? I know I've been kind of walking through this.
I have a couple additional things to add, Samir, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, the first would be, and I think maybe it's just the example that's on the page, we probably shouldn't be including the firm name here. The reason for that is we've seen this happen with other recruiters and candidates in the past. Sometimes candidates will just apply directly, and we obviously don't want that to happen to you, where you introduce an opportunity to a candidate and then they apply directly, and then we then find and then you and then you submit the candidate and the firm comes back and says, hey, we've already seen this person as of like 24, 48 hours ago. Instead, I would ban the firm. So in this case, if this is like Wills and Sonsini, they're like, we'll call it a Vault 15, Vault 20, kind of whatever the either Vault rankings, Chamber rankings, AmLaw rankings, I would use that terminology to ban the firm. And you can describe them as well as like most recognized name in the venture. So it could be them, it could be Cooley, it could be Fenwick, it could be Mofo. But it puts you in a position of a bit more strength. But at the same time, you're communicating what you need to communicate to the candidate so that they know this is like a legit opportunity. Second thing I'll note here on timing. So as folks probably know, my wife, if I reference a lot, we actually met at Cravath. So she's ex Big Law. She now works at a firm here in San Francisco and like the elite boutique firm here in San Francisco. Um, if I think about like her timings when she opens emails, I'm thinking of like most of my friends who are in Big Law when they open emails. If you're in New York, people usually only hit the office between 10 and 11 a.m. So what then they usually go to like a workout class or something in the morning. And so what that means is the window for you is probably somewhere between like 8 o'clock to 9:30 is when you're probably going to get an email opened. It's like when they're on their way to the gym, coming back from the gym, on their way into work. If you're in California, people tend to start a bit earlier. We'll call it in that 8 to 9 range. A lot of folks are usually also driving into the office. You kind of miss the commute. What that then means is they probably, like my wife does, she'll check her emails when she wakes up around 6:30 before she goes to the gym, PT. And then I imagine it'll be something similar, say, in places like Texas or the Midwest, where there's more of a driving culture, and the firms tend to start kind of in that like between 8 to 9:30 range. Um, on the tail end of day, you're likely, unless they're slow, in which case it's a bit more variable in terms of when they respond. Uh, Folks in New York will work later. And so what that means is like if an email hits their inbox, say around dinner time, which would be around 8, or when if they're leaving the office, if like they're particularly busy, it would be around 9:30, 10. Um, that might be when you catch them in California. And I remember this when I was going through OCI like a decade ago. One of the big selling points of the firms in California is that they tend to leave the office sooner, right? Because they have to drive home, they have families, etc. Um, you'll probably catch them either in like that 5 to 7 range when they're like just before they leave for their commute. Uh, and then like when they're spending time with family, they're probably on their personal device, watching TV or whatnot. And then they may check in. They'll probably log in again. They'll always log in for work for a few hours, and they'll probably check their phone once more around like that 9 to 10 range before they go to bed. So I think it's like we're really trying to find like meet them where they are. The lunchtime I've found to be a bit mixed because if like especially at these bigger firms, they're probably and right now in the summer, they're taking summer associates to lunch. They probably have other like partner lunches, etc. It's less likely that they'll have an opportunity to respond. Um, but I mean, if you send a message, then they'll probably still see it. They may just not respond to you until later in the day, and it might just require, as Samir was alluding to with the sequencing, like a second message or a third message before they actually say something. Cool. Thank you.
Of course. Any questions so far? I haven't been able to look into the chat, but has anything come in, Ashwin or Jackson? Nothing. Okay. And then just to quickly highlight, do you think there's a difference between like a first, like when you're first starting out, like a first to third year associate or third to fifth year associate versus maybe someone who's becoming more on the senior side, like 7+ years on timing and when to reach out?
Sorry, you're asking me.
Yeah. Like if you're reaching out to like a third year associate, from Big Law, who's you're trying to move them compared to, your wife, who's probably, I'm assuming at the 7+ year range. Do you think it's different timing wise?
Yeah, she's eighth year, I think going on ninth year at this point. Um, yeah, so the candidates that are most likely to move, as some folks here probably know, so apologies if I'm repeating stuff that you're already knowledgeable about. The candidates that are most likely to move are in like they'll call it the third to sixth year kind of mark. And the reason for that is they've done their requisite 2+ years at a law firm, so they're not seen as quote a flight risk. But I think that's also like when most firms are looking to hire somebody that say was trained at a Skadden, was trained at a Cravath, was trained at a Sullivan and Cromwell. So they have the big law training, which they can now bring to a firm that might have better work-life balance, better billables, etc. As far as like the timings I mentioned before, I think those generally hold regardless of the year of the candidate. It's just that when you get to the more senior levels, especially as the folks start doing a bit more work, say on business development and whatnot, it becomes and especially if they have like families, things get a little bit more variable because it's like the idiosyncrasies of their personal life play a little bit more. Whereas like if they're more junior in their career, they're likely grinding, like in all honesty. And so they likely have more stability as far as their schedule is concerned. And they're in the office at a certain point, they grind through the day, they leave the office at a certain point. So you can roughly say when you're going to hit them. The thing I'll note about senior candidates, though, is and this kind of comes back to this thing we're starting to develop more of here at Paraform, being a bit more candidate first. Senior candidates, including folks like my wife, you'll likely need to develop a relationship with them well in advance of some of these roles coming online. And so, one of the things I would encourage everybody on this call to do is, especially like, let's say you have a role and you reach out to a candidate, I wouldn't let any of these relationships, particularly with candidates you know are pretty valuable, to wither on the vine. I would stay in touch with them. I would try to share market insights. I would just like stay in their I'm forgetting the word here, but like I would just kind of stay in kind of their radar or on their radar. And so when the opportunity comes for a great role, when you have like a great role in Paraform or whatnot, or off Paraform for that matter, that you want to bring to them, it becomes a lot easier to convince them, hey, I should definitely work with this individual because I've known them now for a long time, and therefore, like I know they have my interests in mind when they're putting me up for roles. And I think like that, especially at the more senior levels, plays because it'll take a little bit longer to convince these folks to leave where they're at. And then once you put them in process, they also want to know they have an advisor of sorts that can work with them as they go through the process. Given that it'll be a bit more specific to them. Like the compensation might be a little bit more customized to their experience, their background, etc., which is a bit different than say junior or mid-level recruiting, where it's more or less on like a pricing schedule. It's like you come in as a third year, this is what we're going to pay you, and then kind of call it a day.
I appreciate the answer there. To move on, the next thing that I wanted to highlight on a more role level was Parabot. This is something a lot of people have been utilizing behind the scenes, and it's something that a lot of people, especially in tech, utilize. Uh, but we need to start using a little bit more on the legal side. We get a lot of questions on a daily basis, over Slack, over email. And for the most part, I think that the Parabot should be your first like one-stop shop for all the questions in regards to a role. So you'll find it in the top right corner, right by the bell icon. And here you could ask any question regarding the role, and you could also add candidates to kind of calibrate and see if it is a fit. That doesn't mean you shouldn't contact us over Slack whenever you have questions. This is just more of this might be able to answer you, especially if you're a UK recruiter at a time right before, all of our team is waking up and kind of getting started. This might be a way to quickly get an answer rather than waiting on us. Um, in this case, like you might be able to ask, like, we know that Presidio is a remote role, but is there an office? So is there an office for Presidio? And then it'll look through, it'll try to utilize the context, and it'll give the answer theirs. So in this case, yeah, fully remote firm, no physical office requirement, founded in San Francisco, operates remotely, do not need to be in California or barred there. So I'll give you a quick answer on everything like that. In fact, it even just told you that there's a home office stipend, which is provided for remote work, which is not something that we've highlighted on the role. So it's interesting that it's able to kind of pull into the role, index everything from the intake call to everything we've listed, and even utilize context behind the scenes to give you guys the answers that are necessary that might not be super obvious at kind of a first breath through the role. So this is something we've been recommending. As I said, it also does candidate calibration. So feel free to add candidates, ask it questions. But for the more complicated tasks, the team is always available over Slack. And that is something I wanted to highlight as well. Any questions you guys have, feel free to continue sending over Slack messages and developing a relationship with us and the team, especially on the client-facing side. Jackson, Simran, and Ashwin are all great to ask questions when it comes to candidates, and they're always willing to help. I think honestly, top builders on the platform and everybody else who is finding success seems to be in consistent communication with us over Slack. So I know there might be a little bit of a learning curve, but it is very similar to, let's say, a Teams where you would just hop into a basic group chat with the rest of the Paraform legal team and ask any questions there. For another standard that we've been trying to enforce, it's keeping all the communication centralized in that group chat, just in case I'm out of office, Ashwin's out of office, someone else on the team will be able to reach out and support you, including anyone on the tech team or on the tech support team. Let's say there's an issue with your account, you highlight us. Often we'll have to kind of bring them into that chat. But if all the centralized communication is in that original chat that we create, it's a lot easier on our end in the future. And we know that after 30 days, you guys usually get kicked out of these chats. Feel free to send us an email. We can get you that invite going and kind of redo the process. We're trying to figure out a better way to do this moving forward. But right now, I just have to send you or resend you an invite, kind of approve you as a guest, and continue doing that cycle on a 30-day basis. But want to talk about that as well. And then something I also wanted to highlight that people aren't utilizing is the strong example profile. So the ideal candidate profiles are great. When you click on them, they'll be highlighted and it'll tell you their backgrounds. But when you combine this in combination with the past hires function, a lot of these people were hired through Paraform, so you'll be able to take a look and see kind of what's been working. But you could also go back in time and see, for example, we just clicked on 3 profiles. All of them were from Goodwin or had experience at Goodwin. Now you could think of it as a feeder into Presidio. What I really want to highlight there is a lot of firms end up hiring specifically from law schools or specific firms. So building out those patterns, I'm sure you guys are already recognizing and utilizing the sourcing function. So when you click on sourcing and where to look, this gives you a good idea of what to look for and how to do the outreach. But you also might be able to find kind of niche small things, like they're hiring a lot from one law school, and small patterns like that might be able to help you just a little bit more. And it might be the difference between doing a lot of outreach and not getting a hire versus one person replying and getting him into the pipeline 2 to 3 weeks later. So just wanted to quickly highlight that. I think it's something that's definitely powerful in combination with everything else that you're doing. But those just were a couple of things that I wanted to quickly go over. Then I'll quickly stop sharing my screen so I could change sharing.
Diego, to your question, so Diego asked the question, not necessarily legal specific, but for any given role that's been long-standing, does Parabot have memory data points to figure out evolving role requirements, to figure out what hasn't worked, comp changes, or better check like hiring manager announcements and past candidates? Yes. So really any data point that has hit the platform, and this includes even like video-based data points like the intake calls, all of that is being parsed by the Parabot. And so as we say the comp goes from like 150 to 200 to 200 to 250, you should be able to say, like, you should be able to track that, the changes that take place. I will note that I'm not entirely sure if it'll necessarily give you a date stamp for when that change has taken place. But I do know the data exists because we're obviously, as the SPL team, making those changes live into the platform at a certain point, and the date I can see the date stamp on our end. I just don't know if the Parabot necessarily services that specific piece of data. But you can ask the question, "Hey, has the comp changed here? Like, when was the last announcement?" And you don't necessarily have, you can also check that yourself. You can go to the announcement side and you can press that and kind of see when the last announcement took place. But the Parabot should be able to provide more. If you're finding that like there's certain questions the Parabot's not answering, let us know too. This is like obviously something that we with dedicated product resourcing can get updated. So if we don't think that like the Parabot's answering the questions effectively, we can fix that. I'm going to answer Ollie's question as well. Hey, Ollie, good to see you again. I'm about to make my first resume submissions. I've historically always formatted the resume myself to promote my company brand, make them bespoke. Is self-formatting typically done on the Paraform platform? Do you have a preference either way? I think like I generally don't have a strong preference as long as the resume, and I've gotten feedback from a few hiring managers on this across the country, as long as it's legible, like it's very clear what this person has done, you're leading with kind of their experience, and then if there's like education or whatnot, it follows afterwards. As long as you're doing the things that make it very easy for a hiring manager to see why this candidate is going to be a strong fit, I don't think it should be an issue. Where I've seen custom resumes fall apart have been there's an excessive use of color. Like certain resumes are just like a profusion of purple or a profusion of blue, and it's just very distracting. B, the resume itself it still has errors or typos. And particularly for our partners who are not based in the United States, like if we're using British English, when you're kind of writing it yourself, I have seen some of that slip through on occasion where there'll be like an errant U put in, which will be flagged by our hiring managers because they're not asking the question, why is this happening? It usually isn't a problem. We can smooth it over, but like why have any of those issues in the first place? Um, and then finally, the in addition to the resume, keep in mind that there's also the overview page that all hiring managers will see, which is like where you'd answer the questions that they've posed. And so in addition to what's on the resume, like I would try to keep the resume honestly to a page, maybe two, if they're like a very senior candidate at most. And then if there are additional experiences that you want to highlight or go in more depth, a cover letter or answering the overview questions is also a section for you to put in any other thoughts on the candidate would be preferable, just to make it easier for hiring managers to review. I do know that if I've seen this, unfortunately, 5-page resumes almost always are a no. Like they'll look at that and they won't take the candidate seriously. And sometimes it's not the candidate's fault, right? Sometimes it's just like there's a lot going on there and the resume had just been reformatted, so it's many pages. Please try to avoid that to the best of your ability. Try to keep it to one, and for more senior people, say with 10 plus years of experience, have it as two. And I would also try the last thing I'll note here is I'll minimize the intro at the top. The resume should speak for itself. I was at X firm, I did X deals or X things, and I was at the next firm, did Y things. I would try to avoid really bulky paragraphs at the top trying to describe the candidate. I would move that into a cover letter, put that into the overview, or just keep that separate and let the resume kind of speak for the specific experience points as well. Cool. Thanks for the question, Ollie.
Yeah, thank you guys for all the questions there. Just for the last point, pretty general, but just traits we've seen that are industry standards that have made it a little bit more difficult. We've heard some recruiters speaking about, oh, prepare from clients have higher standards. Right now, what we're just trying to kind of standardize is these are three topics that continue to come up, but really jumpy candidates are just hard to defend naturally. And then sticking outside of the requested range requested on the role. So if it says 3 to 5 years, 35, 3 to 5 year associate, we've seen people submitting people with more experience and trying to defend it. For the most part, they're looking for someone with that specific range for a reason, whether it's putting them on the partnership track, things similar to that. But that range is there for a reason, and they're not going to pay a fee for somebody outside of that range just because they have more experience. For a lot of the tenure legal recruiters on the platform, this hasn't been a problem, but we've seen it in some cases. So just one quickly clear the air there. In addition, it's really difficult to find solo practitioners and contract attorneys roles. Unless there's a very particular strong fit practice area wise and they have a strong book of business and they kind of want to collaborate with the firm, then there's a fit. We've seen one or two hires on the platform occur that way. But those are, practice areas like I think it's PI and then family law. I think that could happen. But outside of that, it's really difficult. And then, yeah, as I said, I want to quickly highlight these aren't really Paraform standards. These are more so industry standards. And when you think from a partner's perspective on what they want to pay a fee for, they're looking for consistency. They're looking for someone that they trust. And really, these traits are just difficult to justify at times. And this is just, what we've seen on the platform and what we've heard from hiring managers and partners.
The one other note I'll make here on jumpiness is if you're keep in mind like the retention piece. If you're trying to hire somebody for your own agencies and somebody's jumping around every couple years, like law firms are trying to hire for the long term. And so unless the candidate is like truly exceptional or there are truly exceptional circumstances that cause them to move between, say, three firms in 5 years, I just honestly don't think it's necessarily worth your time trying to push those candidates because 9 out of 10 times it's not going to stick. Even if they get the interview, it's not going to stick because there's a reason why they've jumped around a lot outside of truly exceptional circumstances.
Cool. Then see we're coming up on time here, so appreciate everyone's collaboration today. I know we answered a couple of questions in the chat, but we will continue to do this on a bi-weekly basis. So feel free to email us, send any questions over Slack. I'll also send over a recording to everyone in the next couple of hours here today. But yeah, appreciate everyone, and we're going to sign off. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.